I think the question I'm most excited to ask is, like, what are you most excited about right now?
Wow, that's interesting.
Hey, it's you. How you doing?
Good.
You having a good day?
Not too bad. I wish I was outside. It's beautiful.
Here it's raining.
Where are you?
We're down in Florida.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Florida, now's not the time of the year to be outside, so.
No, now's the time of year to go to New York.
Right, exactly.
So are you in Manhattan or?
Yep. You
Oh,
can probably see out the back window a little bit here, all the tall buildings. So, yeah, 54th Street.
nice. Yeah, more and more as I get involved with business, I end up going to all these big cities, and I don't know, I think it's pretty cool.
Yep, absolutely.
So this is the podcast, by the way. There's no like intro banter. This is just it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good.
So were you born in a big city or?
I grew up outside New York, so I'm a New York area native and have been here most of my life. I went to Philadelphia for college at Penn and lived in Boston for a few years after college, but almost always within probably 10 miles of New York City. So there you
Nice. Did you live up, like I've got family in
go. Long
Westchester
Island.
area.
Yeah, Long Island, right outside Queens.
Okay. So that's where you grew up?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the visiting I did was all in Westchester because that's where I've got family up there.
Yeah, it's not all that different. People are similarly driven and fast moving and so on. The New York, I think New York is a lot more friendly than people give it credit for. The the movies and such portray it a little differently than it really is. People want to move fast, but they tend to be very friendly, regardless of whether it's Westchester, Long Island, Manhattan, so on. So.
Yeah, I found that traveling, there's pretty much the same types of people everywhere you go. There's like nice people, there's mean people, there's rich people, there's poor people. There's just like, it's really localized to whatever environment, like whatever smaller subset you're in, like whatever neighborhood you're in.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. So I'm building this like mental picture of you, and I'm very excited because I get to talk to leaders all the time, but you're like a special breed of leader because you're CTO at a company that invests in other companies. And so that means you get this amazing variety, this wide array of different companies and different technologies. And so I think the question I'm most excited to ask is, like, what are you most excited about right now?
Wow, that's interesting. Well, I mean, our next step, I think, for us and as well as across our portfolio. So, my job is, Blackstone manages $500 billion plus, and we own tens, if not, I guess, upwards of almost 200 companies if you count, broadly the ones that we have stakes in. So we are constantly buying and then divesting companies after we fix them. So you're trying to look for what are the patterns of ways to fix them most effectively. And both for Blackstone ourselves and our companies, the cloud transformation is clearly a way to do that at scale. So we are in a major push to move our infrastructure all to the cloud. And while people have been talking about the cloud for a long time, I think that there's a misconception that that's been done mostly already. I'd say somewhere between 10 to 20% of the workloads of the world have actually been moved to cloud. So you would think it would be like 80% with the way that the media covers it. Whereas most enterprises have so much legacy technology that it's not that easy to pick it up and move it. So when you're building from scratch, sure, you can be 100% cloud. I'm hopeful that when we get there in 12, 18, 24 months, however long it's going to take to move most of our infrastructure to the cloud, we will be probably one of the oldest, most cloud companies, some combination of the two of those things, because we weren't born digital, and it's a hard transition for most. And then when we look across our portfolio, every company that we've invested in is somewhere along that journey as well. And by helping accelerate that journey, we think we can add significant value to the company. And it's usually not about cost. It's about how do you use it to become more nimble, to be able to roll out solutions faster than you could yesterday. And that's what we're most excited about. So everyone thinks it's because you're going to save a bunch of money. And in certain cases you can, but that pales in comparison to the value of being able to turn over solutions and enable our business leaders with new tools faster.
Yeah, if you can deliver value faster to the stakeholders, there's a significant value to that speed.
Yeah, absolutely. Velocity, I think, is the value of velocity is underappreciated because everybody is focused on what you can measure, and it's easiest to measure the cost side of the equation rather than the value side.
Well, today we're going to value velocity. That'll be the theme of the episode. Giving velocity the credit it deserves.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. I wish there was a better measurement. I mean, one of your questions around what are measurements are most useful. It's like quality measurements. You can really fixate on number of bugs in your system, number of projects, throughput metrics, number of projects that are completed. You can measure the turnover of your staff. You can measure the effectiveness of your hiring, and all of that stuff is stuff that we value. What I'm still kind of that elusive measurement is trying to measure some sort of elegance and throughput of the technology that's actually delivered at the code level. And I've searched far and wide, and we're still kind of continuing to search, and there's a bunch of new entrants in that as new startups who are trying to do it, and we're engaged with them, but I haven't found the silver bullet yet that I'm continuing to search for, because whatever you measure is what you optimize for usually. So I'm trying to figure out how we can optimize for that true kind of elegance of elegance and excellence of the technology implementation, because that's where you really benefit outsized rewards from that over the long haul.
So I was looking at your past, right? That's like one of the things I like to do, learn about people, see who they are. You seem pretty entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I guess that I was one of the founding team at Capital IQ. I was there for 11 years, came to Blackstone, and really, the reason I came to Blackstone after that was because I felt like it was an opportunity to build something entrepreneurial here. And the way that our leaders, and myself now, hopefully, and others approach any problem is to try to take it down to the most, the essence of the problem, and then come up with a creative solution instead of just managing inside of parameters that may or may not be real, right? A lot of times I was just with a bunch of other technology leaders, and I was, to some degree, I was glad that we think kind of creatively and entrepreneurially about the different problems, whereas some other companies where it was all about kind of managing inside of some fictional set of parameters that were set by upper management, or a budget that was unchangeable or whatever, where we like to take much more of a common sense approach to every problem. And I think that's what being entrepreneurial is. When you are managing payroll for a small company, and you have to sell a certain amount so you can invest a certain amount so you can pay people so you can hire more people, it gets real really fast about operating creatively to stretch all of those parameters as far as you absolutely can. So I think we do that at Blackstone, even though Blackstone's been around. Steve and Pete Peterson founded it 30 plus years ago, but it still operates that way across all of our businesses. And there's a decision by decision entrepreneurial attitude, and we try to get rid of all bureaucracy. So that's what sort of led me into this, which was sort of a weird path for somebody from a tech company to head to Blackstone. Was not necessarily a common path.
So I've got some more questions about seeing the problem through the eyes of an entrepreneur, like how you get your team to think that way, to look that way. But I'm curious to know, there's such a variety of structure between the different CTOs that I meet at funds. And I'm curious to know, what does your structure look like? The first question would be, do you build, well, one of them that was really interesting was Georgian Partners. I talked to Mads, it's their CTO over there, just a couple weeks ago. Really, really cool guy. One of the things that they do is they invest a lot in conversational AI. That's like one of their investment thesis. And so they ended up building some, like they have an internal development team that they'll build tools and libraries that are for use of only their portfolio companies, that was pretty cool for me to learn.
It's great.
Are you guys doing any of that, or what does your team structure look like?
So my team structure, for internal Blackstone technology is approximately 400 resources between offshore and onshore and a variety of different teams. And we try to operate as much as we can as a single team. We have an engagement function that are really the folks that are on the front lines, understanding the business problems in their entirety, such that we can then solution things that solve the business problem, but also fit into our technology infrastructure and architecture well. Most of the, what I do see is firms that are much more like order takers, where the technologists just implement solutions because someone told them to, end up with a real mess of an architecture. So by embedding our engagement function with the folks that we're trying to serve, they get a better sense of, okay, this is specifically what I have to achieve with a solution, and then we can go back to the engine room and decide how to build a system that achieves said requirement. Like an example would be, sometimes people ask for a report. I need something that shows X, and if you just go run back and build X, you deliver X, and the person says, well, this doesn't solve my problem, and then you realize the problem was that they need to communicate with their clients a certain way. They just happened to think that the report was the way to do that. And only when they saw the finished product did they realize that wasn't going to work. Well, I want to short circuit all that trial and error and have the engagement folks really understand, okay, the problem that person is solving is that they need to communicate certain information to their clients. And then once we know that, we can come back and say, okay, does it make sense to have a portal that enables us to communicate with them directly? Does it make sense to have a report? Does it make sense to do something completely different? So I'd say like focusing on the problem is far and away the biggest challenge. Now, in terms of our portfolio, we do not build technology for the portfolio, but we do coalesce a community of the portfolio to meet regularly to discuss all the problems that everybody has and share solutions with each other in a much more kind of peer-to-peer style sharing environment that is very healthy. I'd say, the companies we buy are large companies. So each of them have their own tech ecosystem, and they're across a lot of different industries. So given that we're not necessarily focused in one or two verticals, the amount that you can leverage cross companies sometimes is limited by the fact that their use cases are very diverse. Although, some of the stuff like cloud enablement and otherwise cuts horizontally across every one of the companies.
But it is a value add. It's somewhat attractive for companies because the width of the different portfolio companies you have, that's a value add, because that'll allow business to occur within the portfolio companies naturally.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily against it. I'm just saying it's certainly, a lot of work in order to accomplish that, and the complexities of building technologies that scale across tens and hundreds of companies is cannot be understated. There's a reason why these startups raise 5, 10, 20, $100 million in venture funding in order to get to viable. So you just have to I think you got to go in with your eyes wide open and not try to eat the elephant and die of indigestion by building some sort of monster technology that does everything for everybody. So I'd say we're very good. Hopefully we're good curators of technology that can be helpful to our portfolio by basically taking all the best ideas and just making sure people hear about them so that they can pick and choose what makes the most sense for them.
So primarily your team, you said you have about 400 resources. Their primary objective is Blackstone's technology as an operating venture firm.
Correct. I mean, we have, we're over 510 billion as of last quarter under management with, many businesses contained inside that 510 billion. So it is not insignificant, the amount of information and different strategies and all the different systems that are required to make those professionals as efficient as possible. And we really pride ourselves on the scale that we can achieve as a business with a relatively small amount of people. So that kind of leverage per employee is something that we're really thinking about. And the way to leverage employees is give them the best tools possible, right? If you have a sharper axe, you can cut down more trees, right? So,
Yeah.
So we're constantly trying to create tools that enable us to have sharper axes and be more productive.
Nice. And then you have a special team who's building a chainsaw.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then maybe what the next one will be, a bigger machine that harvests the trees too, right? Like you got to be constantly understanding what you're trying to achieve, but also purpose build it, right? If you're only cutting, to continue the analogy, if you know you're only going to build one cabin, then the time spent designing a machine to harvest, many hundreds of logs is not really that important. Whereas if you know you're going to build a whole town of structures, you obviously need to harvest that much more wood. So we're constantly prioritizing and trying to only bite off what we know we can get done, and that kind of maximizes the value to our firm.
Yeah, getting lost in the weeds is so easy. I've been writing code for over 17 years, and it's very frustrating when you figure out that the time you spent was building something cool and not something that actually brought value. And so I learned that within the first 5 or 6 years of my career, luckily. And I read one of your interviews, and you were talking about the difference between building something cool and building something of value too.
Right. Yeah. I think I think we have a unique combination where Blackstone is an interesting set of problems, and the use of technology is extremely broad. Where are we going to develop the latest, most aggressive conversational AI or something? I don't know, I'm just trying to come up with an example of deep tech. Probably not. But we are going to stitch together lots of different technology to create some, a plethora of different tools and add a lot of value in doing that. So you have to, different strokes for different folks in terms of who we're recruiting. But I think it's a nice combination of broad experience, deep technology, but not necessarily the deepest, but the ability to have value, be a part of value creation right from the beginning. Like we try to have all of our interns, they're here right now, they're shipping code into production, almost immediately. And that's adding value to Blackstone. I think it's a really cool experience to have when you're an intern to think that you influenced a pretty big, influential company during a very short internship. Whereas a lot of the bigger companies, I think it's much less tangible, the value that's added.
It's like work on this Hello World project and submit it for review
or something. Yeah. And there's nothing against that, but we're trying to create something unique.
I like that. And you're getting the culture of shipping frequently and right at the beginning.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So because we're talking about, people and engineers or newer people, I guess one of the things that I'm always interested in is you've got this group of people that work with you, your managers below you or directors below you, and they all have behaviors that they display normally. But I'm curious, what stands out to you? What behavior, I'm trying to think how to form the question correctly. What behavior stands out to you as someone who has potential?
Sure. It's some combination of aptitude and energy and grit with the humility to know that they don't know everything. So I'd say those are my three most important things. They got to be willing to fight through it, because success isn't built in a day, right? It's built over a long period of time, and obviously you have to have a certain amount of aptitude and skill, be it from experience or from school or otherwise, in order to give you the tools to do it. But that grit and curiosity is just so important. So I like to, talk about what people have read recently and, and how they approach learning overall, because that's usually a very, very good separator to the people that succeed, big in life, is that kind of consistent learning all the time, reading and just feeling a passion for getting better. So you need energy in order to fuel that passion.
Do you know about Leader Bits? Is that why you brought that up or no?
No.
Oh man. Yeah. So we started the podcast and then a leadership company came out of it because we saw that the industry was broken. It was like, let's go to a conference, let's do a workshop, teach you like 80 great things. And then you go back and you forget it all. And I said, that's not how leaders become great. I don't know how that's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And we were talking here at the podcast. We're like, well, how do leaders become great? Because I was interviewing all of these people. I'm like, slow, small, consistent improvements over time. That's all they do. And then so we said, all right, well, let's go look in the market to see what leadership program is set up for that. And there was like none. There was like, people just figure it out themselves. Like you probably have Audible and you listen to some stuff and you're just in this habit. Yeah. So we ended up making a ton of leadership content that is just like these small weekly habits. People do something 10 minutes every week, and we've deployed that like globally. And that's actually tomorrow I'm going for we're getting a reinvestment from our fund that did the initial investment. And so
congratulations.
I'm very excited about that. Well, any tips for me on that tomorrow?
Well, read everything, right? Always. Be detail oriented. Don't make assumptions. I'd say would always be that. That sounds great. I mean, I'm a big believer in like a big part of excellence is showing up every day and working hard and then, understanding that that's what it takes. And don't try to fool yourself when deep down inside, if you've given 100%. So, figure out how to give that 100%. And if you only want to give 90 that day, don't try to tell people you gave 100, right? And just every single day, I sort of think about like Shawshank Redemption, where he's breaking out by scraping at the wall every day for whatever it was, 12 years. Sometimes that's what technology is about, right? It's about hard work, sustained effort over time, and eventually you break through and you get to where you want to go. I'm a huge believer in consistency, and the power of habit is a book that I always recommend to everybody, because it's just something people have to learn. And I have two kids, 11 and 13, and I'm trying to teach them that, right? Because I think it's interesting to watch how distracted everybody can be. Now we have more resources than we could ever imagine, right? When I was growing up, you go to the library and you had like the business book section, and it was like one shelf, and you were like, oh, this is amazing. And you go to a bookstore once in a while, and and now it's just everything everywhere: podcasts, free content on the internet, paid content on the internet, books everywhere. It's overwhelming to the point where it can take away from your ability to like make that sustained. And activity doesn't mean progress either.
I know.
Right? So people are always measuring activity. Everyone is so busy, but they're not necessarily moving towards the goal. So we're constantly trying to keep track of that, so that we're not just turning a perpetual motion machine. We're actually moving forward. It's not easy. There's just so much distraction in the modern enterprise and the modern world overall. So we're trying to be vigilant and figure out ways to clear that for people so they can focus on what's important, not just what's seemingly urgent.
Right. That is super important skill. I was not expecting, I'd say maybe like 1 out of 50, 1 out of 60 interviews, I find someone who's like all about that. So your kid, just curious, I've got 2 kids too. Are boys, girls? What do you have?
A boy and a girl, boy 13 and a girl 11. So they're getting to the point of being fully fledged adults now. And
of course,
watching that has been just one of the most amazing things, and trying to prepare them to be happy, successful, contented people is a major focus.
I have a boy who is 4 months old and a girl who's 2 years old.
Oh gosh, so you've got it all ahead of you. It goes fast. It goes. People say that, and it's always amazing how true it is once you've been through it. Whereas when you're a kid listening to it, you're like, your parents don't know anything, it's going so slow, but when you're on the other side, man, it goes fast. So enjoy it.
When we get both of them crying at the same time, that's when I remind my wife that it goes fast. I was like everybody says, this goes really fast. So.
And I have to tell you, it's so far so good in terms of for me, and obviously everybody's different, but like it only gets better too, because they start to interact with you in ways that are more exciting for you and engaging and that sort of thing. So sharing all of the great lessons, all of the great content, all the great movies, everything with the kids and as they grow up is just, super fun. So I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Yes, I'm already very excited. I actually just bought her, she's turning 2 in like a month, and I just bought her like a child guitar, like
Awesome.
half-size guitar, because she's really into my guitars and like likes to strum them and everything. And so she tries to hold them, but they're too big. So
Fantastic.
I was like, I know
Get
it's
them going early. They learn. Once they learn early, they're so much better than we could possibly be.
Right. And it's a good lesson on a couple things. First thing is like you're a byproduct of your environment for sure. So it's like whatever objects are in your environment are the things that are available to you, like until you get the ability to swap things in and out of your environment. Right. So you put good things in their environment, and then that increases the odds of good things happening.
Yep.
So
I do think that the one thing, and this kind of dovetails to a belief, is like, I do believe that the hardest thing for me at least. So I grew up, my dad was a police officer, and I got to go to Penn, which was amazing, and so on. But I don't think I felt like the world was changeable until after I joined the two founders of Capital IQ, and we started building the company. And I felt like I wish I had a belief that the world was changeable by my effort earlier. I always felt like I could deliver inside of parameters, that the world was, there were certain rules, and you just abide by the rules and you move forward inside of some, well-defined paradigm of success. And what you learn over time is that there's, that's just made up by other people, and there's no reason why that paradigm can't be changed. And, that's entrepreneurial thinking, is that you can actually change that. And it took me a while to realize that. And I'm trying to give that back to my kids, that while obviously you have to abide by the rules of being a good citizen and all of that stuff, but you should always be asking why, and you should sort of be annoying towards changing for the right reasons to the right way, and not just putting up with a suboptimal solution to almost anything, whether it be at home, at work, and so on. So those are the type of people we recruit. And that's also, what I'm trying to teach the lessons for the kids is, be an agitator in a positive way around change for the better. The more you can push, I think the more progress you make.
It seems to me that you have a high level of discipline. I'm curious, like, where do you think that came from? Do you think it came from your dad being a police officer and raising you with that? Or something you had to work hard and learn? Or
I don't know. I mean, we always, I can't remember. I started working when I was 13 years old. I started caddying, and then I worked like 20 to 30 hours a week during high school, as well as ran. I'm also a distance runner, which, in order to be a successful distance runner, discipline is sort of important. So I ran in high school and college, and I don't know, it was always sort of the person I was, and I wanted to finish things to the end and keep going. I don't know if I don't remember a moment where I realized that was important. I sort of always knew that was important, which I think is lucky. One of the things that you emailed about was like falling in love with technology, or knowing what you wanted to do. And like, I was, other than, every kid, I think, who plays sports always dreams about becoming some sort of professional athlete. But once that was proven to be inaccessible, I always knew that technology was, like, building things with technology was what I wanted to do. So I got a real gift on that front. And maybe because that was so clear in my mind that I knew that just working towards that would be a positive, I guess. I'm not sure, but it was a good set of events that kind of, I felt, put me on the right path, and at least knowing what I wanted to do. I remember in college, talking to other folks, and they were like, I have no idea what I want to do when I want to get out. And I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, I felt like from like 9 years old or 8 years old, I knew what I wanted. And that was, looking back, I didn't appreciate how, like, lucky that was. And I do now. So.
Nice. Yeah, I've known what I wanted to do for a long time. Like I've had that sense of knowing, like it can change, but like that certainty of like, I'm going to do this. Yeah. Computers right from the beginning, right. As I wrote this first line of code, I just felt like a caveman that had just created fire. I was just so pumped up. I was like, this is amazing. I want to do this forever.
Do you think is it the act of doing it, or is it the watching the fire light up that is what makes you want to do it?
Watching the fire light up.
Yeah, totally. Me too.
Yeah.
So I think that like that, and the technology was just the most tangible way to see those results fastest. So, perhaps something else would have hit on that same gene, I guess. But technology is just so fast, right? I mean, even like you build a house, right? Or you do tangible buildings of things, and they just take so much longer than anything you can do with code. So I think that's what's addictive. It sort of fuels that dopamine hit every time you get something working, and then you assemble systems into bigger systems, which are bigger excitement, and it's a fun cycle to get, or it's flywheel to get turning there.
And then you realize what you can do with people. And you're like, oh, wow, I can only do so much code, like mathematically for the rest of my life. I could only create this much impact. But if I learn to lead a team of people and then teams of teams and then organizations, and then I can actually create significantly larger scale change. And that's really the fire that like I'm excited about. It was the fact that I did something, like I made it happen. And yeah.
Yes. And that's what people actually ask me all the time about, like, what are you most proud of? And it's always just like the team that we've been able to build, both at Capital IQ before and Blackstone now, where like that engine, right? Like you can drive a lot of, like, if you make a car analogy, right? Like you can drive your car a lot of different places. So getting to one destination or another, not that it's not exciting and fun to see that happen, but the fact that the car ran and that, you built the car is far and away more exciting than getting to any specific destination. So that team is, great to be a part of, and I just take great pride in building it and feeding it and keeping it running as well as we can.
So you get to, like, your core responsibilities there, do you get to look at new companies that are being acquired, or do you just?
So, to some degree, but it's episodic. We do some strategic investing that I get very involved in. So if there's a firm that we're working with, oftentimes we'll partner with them and give them an investment in addition to working with them to deploy their product and gain strategic value on both sides. So in those, I get deeply involved. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day, and Blackstone Technology is a broad responsibility just to keep it running here. So then across our portfolio, we have a separate portfolio operations group that spend more time working on that. And we work with third parties all the time. Deals are extremely intensive and sometimes episodic. And so, staffing them with permanent resources is almost impossible. Like you need to bring in experts at a moment's notice to work for a month in Europe on a deal. You can't have just a permanent staff to do that. So we work with a lot of partners, and we work on developing those great partnerships so they understand what we need. They understand what we need on every deal, and so on. So I do less of that, and frankly, I think that's good with my personality to some degree. The being somebody who's a habit person who wants to keep chipping away at that wall. Sometimes deals are very much peaks and valleys, and so we like to bring in partners to help us with that.
Nice. You have your routine, and it's articulated, designed. You like that, and when something comes in that's like a peak, you bring in third-party people to help out.
Yeah, when we need to. It's all like we try not to be like super religious around, like we have to do it this way every time. We're very much like, what are the facts on the ground at this current situation, and what are the best tools for the job right now, and then make good decisions every time. And I'd say if you, what's the core skill set of Blackstone is probably decision making. We're just, over and over again, each decision is analyzed and made, and we all work together to develop that muscle, that decision making muscle, so that we can consistently make them in the right way going forward. Investment decisions, technology decisions, internal decisions, people decisions. That gives us the most flexibility to kind of go in a lot of different directions.
Do you have a strategy that you can deploy across all your different types of decisions?
Well, I believe in, I'll talk a little bit about technology design process, because I think that's a type of decision. And it dovetails very well with our investment committee process, where there is a team that is deep in the problem, right? Whether it be acquiring a company, investing in a company, buying debt, and whatever the case may be, or designing a different system. Somebody's understanding, what are we talking about here? And then we're writing down exactly the problem and the proposed solution to the problem. In technology, it happens to be, this is what the screens are going to look like, and this is how people are going to interact with the solution, or this is the solution we're going to buy and how we're going to integrate it with the current systems we have. And then on the deal side, it's, what do the financials look like? What's the management team? How do we make sure that it's going to be successful in the future? How is the industry? And we write all that down. And then we have group meetings where we're discussing all the parts of that technology solution with people with all different types of backgrounds. So the folks that are really focused on the business problem, the people who are the technology designers, the people who are the technology implementers, get as many of them in the room as you can and flush out the solution. And in the investment committee process, same thing, like, they talk about the investment, and sometimes it moves forward exactly as was on the page, but most of the time there's some tweaks to it, right? Like, oh, maybe we should explore this, maybe we should explore that. Same thing with the technology. We tweak it and we rewrite it. We go back to our design meeting, we have another one, and we just do that as many times as possible, that iteration, in order to get it right. Which I think is a little bit different than pure, you're probably going to say, oh, iteration, agile, that is, that's the word of the, one of the key foundational elements of a lot of technology now. I'm a believer in sort of a modified agile approach, where you constantly want to iterate, but you want to think through the problem up front too. Like, you don't want to just use iteration as an excuse to just haphazardly move forward. So we do a lot of design work up front, and then we iterate quickly through implementation, trying to learn, and then obviously modifying the design if we need to. But hopefully we've thought through the design enough such that the modifications are not that significant.
While keeping the problem at the front.
Right. Yeah. Always problem first, and questioning everything. Right. Why are you? I was just with a group, and we were talking about automating bad process, and how a lot of people wind up just doing that because they're just making the way that they currently do it better, instead of saying, wait a second, why are we doing this first place? And I think there's a ton of waste in the technology industry because people are doing that.
So you meet with a lot of leaders often. You go to different groups. Give me some insight on that.
Well, I think that it's interesting to me, and it's something that I've learned that I should have learned earlier. When you are a tech company like we were at Capital IQ, sometimes you can get very insular, where it's us against the world. You're building a product, and and you would never talk to your competitors, right? Because they're the enemy, and let's just build something great so we can win. And I think that's a very powerful motivator, but oftentimes can kind of put you in the cave instead of make you empathetic to all of the different sensibilities out there. So my position here has really been a breath of fresh air on that front, and I've been able to develop a lot of great relationships with technologists across the spectrum of our peers and others in the financial industry, and just people that you meet and that you like, and you can learn a lot by just learning from others' mistakes so you don't have to make the same ones. And I think I've kind of tried to lean much more forward on that than I did when I was 25. I think I thought I knew everything, and now hopefully I realize that learning from others is probably a much more effective way to actually learn everything than figure it out with trial and error.
Yes, you got to surround yourself with a lot of smart people, learn from them. We have this one.
And you can learn something from every person, right? It doesn't, just because, it doesn't have to be, Bill Gates that you're talking to in order to learn something, because every person is bringing, interesting data you just have to draw it out of them. So I guess this is what you're doing, right? Is trying to ask the right questions to draw out the knowledge that you can learn from every person is a skill. And it's actually the number one thing we try to teach our engagement folks is like, how can you be like a journalist where you're consistently asking questions and drawing everything you need out of the person so that you can do your job without having to, rely on them because they're busy and they got lots of other stuff to do. So the more you can knowledge you can suck out of them, the better.
Yeah, I also like to let people talk about what they want to talk about. So we do the questions, you got some of the pre-done questions, but usually I just take it with, what are they passionate and excited to talk about? Because that's what's going to bring them the most value. It's what's going to bring the audience the most value.
Right. Absolutely. It's great.
So we've got some questions from the audience. People write in, they ask us questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. So one of the questions is, how do you perform your one-on-ones, the cadence, motivation, context?
That's a good question. I do not have a specific methodology for that. I mean, I've been really lucky that my direct reports, I think my direct report with like the least tenure with working with me is like at, I think 7 years or 6 years right now. So there's a real, once you get into a cadence with somebody, I think you can tailor your interactions with them individually. And I think it's just important to have a lot of interaction. But if you are familiar with each other and you understand the best way to communicate, you can shortcut a lot of the formality, which I think kind of creates a lot of throughput. So I would say there's no formula there, just make sure you believe it's important and then craft a solution for each individual, slightly differently. There are people who are much more formal who like to give me like a written report and review it and do it bi-weekly and that's it. There are other people who, walk into my office twice a day for a minute and a half each time to move things forward. And, I'm okay with either of those things. I don't think that there's one right answer.
So you tailor it based on the individual's style.
Try to.
Nice. I like that. I haven't heard that one before. I've asked this question quite a bit. That's pretty cool. I like that one. Okay. So like when it comes, did you say, I just want to dive a little bit deeper here. Did you say the average, your team member's average duration of being a team member is like 6 years? Is
that was the shortest. So
okay.
I have a direct reports. I think I have 8 direct reports, ish, something like that. And, they've all worked for me for the minimum of 6 years, with some as long as 19. So almost my whole career. So I'm super lucky to have a team that is that cohesive and works together so well and can work together with me. And, just like I kind of tailor stuff to them, I'm sure they're doing the same thing to me to make sure we're doing it as fast as we can.
Usually this isn't the case, right? So I'm personally just more interested in you. Like, what do you think is the driving force of that?
I think we like each other. I think we like to work with each other. I think we treat each other really fairly. And there's a certain loyalty both to the company and to the people that we all try to live every day, I guess, So that's, I would say it's the thing that I'm most proud of. If I was going to be perfectly honest, is the fact that so many great people continue to want to work with me. That's a gift.
Yeah, it's something to be super proud of. It's unique, and like I have an enormous amount of respect for that. So let's talk about, like, have you ever gotten to meet Elon Musk?
I have not, even though we overlapped at Penn for a few years, but I never met him back then either. So there you go.
Nice. Well, we're working on it right now. We're working on doing an interview at the SpaceX factory. We'll invite some people. So if you're interested, we bring you along with us, see some rockets and meet Elon. But I'm curious to know, like, if we're at the SpaceX facility, like let's say you and I are at the SpaceX facility, and Elon Musk gives us a private tour, right? He's like, "Hey, come on, let's private tour," and he shows us. He brings us into this room. There's no rockets around. We're like, "What?" And he's got this special device behind the curtain. He opens the curtain, and it's a time machine. And we flip a coin, and you win. You get heads. So, you get heads. Follow me here. Come on.
So we're in the time machine. Okay, we have the time machine.
No. Oh, wait. All right. Yeah, I'll let you drive. Okay. We are in the time machine. Hopefully it's not like a fly situation where we merge. But okay, so we go back to the first week that you had a job, your first job.
Yep.
And we're watching you work, third person style, and you get to go over there and whisper one piece of advice into your ear. What would that be?
Yeah, I'd say I'll do two things just because it's like, because I already said one of them is like, the first one would have been like, whatever you can think of, you can do, or you can change, or you can and this is certainly Elon Musk is a great example of man, talk about can-do attitude, right? The guy has done some things that I'm sure everyone would have felt were crazy, but he tried to do them and he accomplished a lot. And I think that's something to learn from. And I certainly was probably too risk averse or just too follow the rules guy. So I wish I would tell myself, put yourself out there, take some more risk, or at least realize that that you have the ability to go after some big dreams. So I would say that. And the second thing was actually one of the most important, advice that I got was actually from somebody that I didn't even have a real good relationship with, but I felt when I started working, my first job at a consulting firm was doing support. And during recruiting, they had told me specifically, you're not going to have to do support. Because I had asked the question, because I knew I wasn't going to like that. I wanted to build something new. And literally the first day they put me on exactly opposite of what they told me I was going to work on. So I felt very aggrieved by this. And I'm not a quiet person. So I was, letting everybody know about how unfair this was. And this is, and I felt lied to, or at least deceived a little bit. But it was the nature of the business that everything was changing all the time. So they couldn't know. And looking back now, I was acting incredibly immaturely, but this individual who wasn't even a friend or a mentor or anything, but he came over and he gave me some real straight talk about stop complaining and, do your job and do it excellently. And the people who run towards the fire or who do the crappiest job are the ones that get the most opportunity. And it was game changing. It was the first 2 months I was really unhappy. And after he told me that, I was all right, I'm going to take a different approach. And I'm glad I did that. And I don't know what made me do that. Maybe I was just so unhappy. I was looking for any out, or maybe he was so persuasive. I can't totally remember. But I probably would say that to myself as well. Just be if life throws you lemons, make lemonade and then, figure out how to grow from there. So I probably should have done that more.
Yeah. Make the best lemonade on earth.
Yeah, exactly.
With excellence.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like that. That is super excellent advice. That straight talk, that wake up, that realization, the realization of there's most things are average, right? Most people will do average work. So to find people that will do excellent work, because they've set that level of quality personally for themselves, those are the people to surround yourself with. That's a good culture.
Absolutely.
Have you ever, just personal question, have you ever come across those like motivational mixes on YouTube?
No, I have not, but maybe I'll check.
Okay. I'm gonna send you a link. What's happened in this underground culture of like leadership stuff, they've taken like speeches, like one of my favorite people is like Art Hugh, or not, sorry. Art Hugh, CTO of Lenovo, is one of my favorite people. I love you, Art.
I know Art as well, so there you go.
Oh, you do know Art? Is he a great person?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Art Williams, billionaire insurance guy. Do you know who that is? Oh, okay. So he billionaire in insurance from 70s, 80s, but he's got these management philosophy. And one of his things you're reminding me of, he says, all you can do is all you can do. Right. And then he says something about like, all you can do is enough. But anyways, the YouTube mixes are these great speeches with these people that have like mic drop lines, but they mix them together with like good music, and you'll hear like Will Smith jump in. Yeah.
You've piqued my curiosity for sure.
I listen to them in the morning. They get me super motivated. But you were saying some of the stuff earlier. I'm like, you read books or you do something with the motivational, because people don't say those words like without being involved with.
Yeah, I think the other thing that was interesting around advice. Now you got me thinking about the past, is like around like testing your limits. And I think oftentimes people like don't understand, and fear is a very powerful motivator, right? So when we founded Capital IQ, we had to meet certain deadlines or we were not going to raise more money. And then, we were going to basically fail. And I really didn't want to fail. So you wind up working 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. And before I did it, I'm not sure if I knew I could do it, but like, I don't know any other way to figure that out. And it's sort of like people who, I run, and so I'm confident that I could finish just about any distance race. But a lot of people say, "Oh, I could never do a marathon." Well, they absolutely can do a marathon. It's like it's a skill that most humans have, because we were built to, we evolved to be able to run, to hunt, and so on. But they in their minds, I could never do it, and that's what's preventing them from doing it. So having some experiences that kind of push you past what your hypothetical limits are is always like extremely valuable in business too. Because I think these extreme races and stuff, I think help push people through some of their physical limits or perceived limits. But I think in business, it's the same thing. And only after you make yourself try do you realize, wow, that wasn't so bad. Your perception of how bad it will be and the reality are always like vastly different. So push yourself, and then you realize that the second time you have to do it, it's much easier, and third time is easier than that. So you build up muscle memory.
Yeah, I like that you run. I run every morning. I'm an early person. I get up at like 5:30. I go for a run. I typically write.
Florida, you need to get up. I mean, you need to do it at 5 o'clock in Florida. It's too hot.
Yeah. Are you an early person or no?
Yeah, relatively. I wouldn't say I'm a crack of dawn, but yeah, I would classify myself as a morning person. So I also think people misunderstand the need for sleep. Like, sleep is extremely important to me, and like, I'd rather do an hour of great work than 3 hours of mediocre work. And being ready physically is very important. To being able to do that, both fitness and just sleep and energy.
Yeah, I sleep like 9.5 hours a night. Like, well, I sleep.
That's on the extreme end for somebody.
I know.
With 2 young children, so I think you're
gonna
make everybody jealous who's listening to this.
But I go to bed very early, so I can put them to bed at like 7:30, and then like I go to bed, right? And then I just keep waking up early, and people are like, I don't know how you go to bed that early. I'm like, have 2 kids under 2 and wake up at 5 a.m. and you will want to go to sleep all the time.
Definitely.
Yeah. But I did get into like testing myself. So I did the company right at the start of the company right at the same time as having my first kid. And so I started to push those boundaries, and I was like, I can't believe how much more efficient I am with all of these little improvements. And so then I started tracking it, and that's when I got into running, because I have to run, because if I run, my body physically performs better. Like my mind, I can think better. I'm in a better mood. I can deal with stress better. Like it's just
I track every day my moods and whether I did exercise and a whole bunch of other questions. And there's definitely correlation, direct correlation with exercise. It was the number one most correlated thing to to mood and my perceived level of output that day. Whether that's whether that's totally true because it's a little qualitative, but at least over time it held up. Just rating myself, so I completely agree.
Yeah, and you go back to the why. The why you're doing it is just to know that like this is a good thing to be in my schedule that I'm spending time on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Anything else you want to get out there into the world?
No, I mean I'm glad we got to talk about this. I really think we're continually trying to build great teams here and find great people who want to go on a fun journey with us. And it's not always obvious. Like I think it's important for everybody to learn deeply about any opportunities that they have. So, there's always a perception and then a reality of every situation. And I think, we're always working to try to learn and make ours the best it can be and get that message out there and continue to build a great team and hopefully people who can be with us for many, many years like the current team has been. So that's really always the message for us is how do we build that brand so that people understand that Blackstone is, a great investment company, but also a very innovative technology culture as well.
Let's say we've got someone listening and they're interested, they've got some skills. Are you looking for like specific skill sets, DevOps, machine learning? Or are you just looking for great technologists that have these culture?
I'm a big believer in hiring the best available talent, and we'll figure out the right way to use them. So I'd say we have a very, very wide aperture for what we would consider if you consider yourself checking all those boxes in terms of grit and aptitude and desire, and you want to be part of something great. Go to our website, apply. You'll get plenty of attention, and we'd love to find great people.
Nice. So they'll go to the website, apply, name drop you, say, I was listening to this
absolutely
amazing guy.
Believe me, we read them all. So it's the easiest way to get into the whole flow. But so I hope it doesn't come off as impersonal. But we read them all. We're constantly looking for great team members.
Fantastic. Well, Bill, we did it, man. We made a podcast.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, talk soon. Thanks for watching this interview. I hope it brought you a ton of value. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Tune in to the Modern CTO channel weekly for more amazing videos just like this one.